Welcome, everybody. Hey, it is Hump Day, Wednesday. Thank you all for stopping in. I think this is as we get going here, and it says we're live, guys. So I'm thinking we're live, and the world continues. So everyone, as we get rolling in here, and I can see us here, so that means we are good to go. So favor upon us all. Thank you all for stopping and listen. The most valuable thing that you possess, you could actually say you own, is your time. It's how you spend your energy. And that's why we fall under this idea that we're sovereign beings, that you can't take that away. So I appreciate it, and I know my guests do as well. So as I like to do before we go forward, speak that favor over us all, nothing missing, nothing broken, be of service to others, and we're prospering. Knowledge. We're going to be sharing knowledge today. And with my two guests, we will have the unique opportunity to see three distinct generations as we approach whatever this zenith is, whatever this apex we're heading towards. I thought today would be great to get the perspectives from two what I call very remarkably enlightened individuals. They are the visionaries coming up behind us. They will be inheriting whatever my generation created, and I don't know how good that'll turn out, but anyway, so please welcome Mr. Ryder Lee from Raised by Giants. How you doing, Ryder? Good to see you.
Hello, Wayne. Thanks so much for inviting me on your show. It's an honor and a privilege to be here because I don't know where I would be without Chris or you, Wayne. So I appreciate both of you very much.
Okay, we're guilty as charged, but anyway, so thank you, Ryder. And of course, my good friend, Chris Mathieu from the Forbidden Knowledge News channel, which, he steps on toes all the time, but that's how you grow. And so, Chris, welcome, brother. Good to see you.
Hey, Wayne, thanks so much for having me. How you doing, Ryder? This is going to be a wonderful conversation as usual. Been looking forward to it.
Excellent. I am all over it myself. And so everyone in the chat room, thank you, moderators, and everybody else joining in the conversation. Remember, we welcome all points of view. And the only thing that we ask here amongst the Soul Tribe is just be respectful. That's it. Pretty easy thing to do. So much love, everyone. So gentlemen, I think we have a unique opportunity here. As I said in the opening, we have three distinct generations here. I'm the boomers. Chris, I guess you would be the millennials, right?
I am technically Generation X.
Okay, so you're an Xer. And Ryder, you would be what?
I would suppose a millennial. I'm not too sure. I was born in the early 90s. So I'm on a cusp there.
Yeah, you are.
Millennial and Generation X or Z.
I was the last year of Gen X.
Interesting. So no matter how you look at it, we have between my age and all the way down to you, Ryder, is, it's 40 years. A lot of time. I mean, when I came into this world in 1995, it was said that America had reached its peak in prosperity. We had come out of World War II just 10 years prior. My generation saw the events, whether you want to believe it or not, man in space. And we conquered the computer. We brought the computer era. And then we kind of handed it off to y'all because, first of all, there was never anything in my generation known as a computer. There was no video games. We used our imagination. I mean, the closest.
You didn't have an Atari back then, Wayne?
No. I mean, you did. Did you have an Atari? All right, cool. Now, I remember playing the arcades. I figured out Pac-Man pretty quickly. And, if you figured out the pattern that it ran, but then again, Asteroids, it was one of those games. And then that whole era kind of morphed into what y'all know as the video gaming era.
Yeah, video games are really interesting. I haven't played any video games in a really long time since I started my show, because I was just like, man, this gets really ridiculous. You know what I mean? People get sucked in so hard. Now I do play some video games on my phone. I'll play some like Diablo or something on my phone. But when it comes to like a system or something like that, an Xbox or a PlayStation, I just don't mess with it anymore, because I feel like it's a really tantalizing thing. And there's people that'll literally just sit in their basements like all day long forever and just play their video games all day. And I'm like, what is that doing to their mind? And, so I haven't played any system.
Calcifying it. I mean, now,
Yeah.
Chris, were you the generation that actually had an Xbox or a PlayStation?
Well, I started out with like an Atari, and then I
Okay.
was so excited when the original Nintendo came out. We got a family Nintendo game system where the whole family would play. Mom and dad would sit around playing Mario Brothers and shit. But I like Ryder. I never really got into video games that much. Nintendo was fun for me for a while, and then I started to get in trouble as a teenager. There was a small period of time during my first marriage where I was extremely depressed and using a lot of illicit substances, where I enjoyed video games probably more than I should have. But I came out of that really fast as soon as I sobered up and stopped using those substances and stuff and got out of that marriage. I was just really depressed at the time. But he's absolutely right. It'll suck you in. It gets you into this fantasy world that you can never match in real life. You can be whatever you want. You can be whoever you want in these games. And that's what sucks these young folks in, because their social lives are really destroyed at this point. I mean, especially after COVID, they can't go outside anymore. They can't socialize. So why not be whatever you can be in these video games? And they just don't ever want to leave. And that's where the problem comes in.
That's a prison, because the VR technology is now here. I mean, that, what is it? Is it Facebook that has the Oculus?
They
I
have
think so.
they're doing the
think-
metaverse thing.
Metaverse, and then anyway, I read recently that in the New England Journal of Psychology that this virtual reality, it we thought that the video games rewired the brain. This really confuses the cognitive aspect of consciousness when you don't realize you're in two different places, but you're really only in one.
Yeah, see, I used VR back when it was first being introduced, and it kind of sucked, and it was very discombobulating. I was nauseous the whole time trying to do it. The graphics weren't even that good. So I was like, I don't think this is ever going to be anything, And nowadays, from what I hear, it's like, you can't even distinguish from real life. So it was a lot different when I tried it. And I don't think I ever want to put a pair of those goggles on, just, for the whole premise of it.
Do you know who perfected the goggles and the technology to where back when I was in the video industry, that was before DVDs. I worked with Philips Electronic. That the thing that we were trying to do was to get a 1-to-1 compression ratio for video. In the early days, if you remember, with the CD-ROMs and what have you, we were at 31 ratios, and it was due primarily to the limitation of storage data. But if you look at this, and it's interesting, the industry that helped perfect what is now being rolled out to the consumer was the adult industry, the porn industry.
Won't be long until we're having sex with robots.
In Japan, that is actually the becoming the social nomenclature, the norm for many what we would call childbearing years for males and females, is that they've got robots now.
But like I said, they make even the online sex better than they could ever imagine in real life. So why would they want to go out with a real girl when they can have a robot who will do anything for them and make them feel better than a human? So that's what we're coming up against now. And I was thinking about the storage problem. We're always looking for more storage, more data, more means for data. What if we are that means? What if eventually that's why they want us to hook up to it? So we're the storage, we're the data, we're the power for everything. And I think that's eventually probably where we're headed. That's what they want.
Well, Chris, to add to that, if you think about it, when we cracked the human genome, which I think was in 2005, and so we suddenly realized that this DNA that gives us existence in here, that we're finding out there is so many levels of data stored in each and every one of us, it begs the question, number one, why? Who would put that in us, that kind of data that we don't even remember how to get access to, but we can see it now? That's a bring out a good point. So if we are the ultimate data storage, the data silos, why?
Well, then how much can we handle, Wayne? How much of that can we actually take on? We're already getting hit with so much information overload, and something is polluting our memory on this planet. People can't remember things that happened last week, right? They can't remember things that happened last month, let alone 5, 10 years ago. We have a very short memory span. So then that begs the question is, if we are this source, if we are taking on all this data, how much of it can we actually handle? I don't know. And based off of what we see in the world, I don't think very much, right? People have a hard time comprehending things.
Well, all right. So we talked about COVID and the lockdowns, and now we're realizing that, oh, crap, that wasn't the right thing to do. But yet we're now in a causality reality from that event. And so our species is dealing with this causality that is really, I think, turned things upside down. And if you look at this today, I just had this list here, and I thought that I'll throw it out there and we can just pick from them. We know now, I think it was last night, that the Pentagon announced that with the cooperation of Germany and Poland, we are now sending Bradley tanks to Ukraine. This proxy war is being ratcheted up. Many are already saying that we have gone past the point of no return, that this is, in fact, we are at the dawn of the actual World War III. But we'll just put that in bucket A. So let's continue. There's also the strong belief out there is that if prophecy is true, if it has any foundation, right, then many are saying it looks like we're in this period that has been talked about, the tribulation. Everything on everything is going wrong. All right, let's add this to that. We recently, there was an article on the forthcoming food shortages. We're seeing the impact, for instance, what they did in culling the chickens. 35 million chickens killed last spring, last summer, and last fall. And now we're seeing the cause of that. Eggs are going to become almost worth as gold. Africa is in the midst of the single largest food emergency in its existence. Let's continue. We have the takeover of AI. AI is everywhere. I mean, you've got governments now turning over their military defense decisions to this. So we have 3 different generations here. Chris, let me start with you. Pick any one of those, or if you want to do a general comment.
Well, I'm going to do a general comment on this because I think what we're seeing is a level of programming since the dawn of whoever had control of humanity. For the longest time, for as long as humanity's been around, as long as we've had controllers, we've most likely been programmed to fear God, to blindly obey things. And the programming evolves as the years go on. And you mentioned, we're Ukraine, World War III. Well, we've been programmed to be afraid of the book of Revelations and that time period for a very long time. We've been spoon-fed all of that. And it seems like they're going off of a playbook to manifest this. Nothing more. I don't think that I don't even think that the true biblical meaning of what is in the book of Revelations is about the end of the world. I think that we've been programmed to believe that for so long, and they're trying to manifest this period where we have so much chaos that they can easily just gain control over everybody, wrangle everybody in, plug us in, and then suck off our energy. I mean, that's just my idea of what's happening, but I think it's just all about the programming we've been subjected to for many, many years. And there's a playbook behind it all that they eventually want us to to gradually go to. They want our psyche to be involved in whatever they're implanting in there so much to where we are blindly believing that we're headed into this age of the apocalypse. And that's what I think we're doing.
Love it. By the way, Ryder, I want to get your take, but just real quick. So the one thing I find oddly strange, gentlemen, and it is oddly strange, and I know the bots are out listening for this. It amazes me in a community as large as YouTube is, even in Facebook, how the Georgia Guidestones have been erased from people's memory. And it's still, it befuddles my imagination because there has been no follow-up. There was a federal crime committed here. There was an explosive device used that was struck down a monument that had been basically, many say, was a warning to all of us that this was their plan. No more than 500 million humans. So, Ryder, what say you on this? And Chris, you're right. It is the agenda.
Well, I want to comment on this World War III thing a little bit, because there was Lyndon B. Johnson in 1958 made a statement to the Democratic caucus and said that control of space means control of the world. Right, that space is a superposition, and from space you can control the tides of the earth, you can rise the sea levels, you can control the climate. And then 3 years later, in 1961, the Air Force started a Strategic Control Command, which is called Project Looking Glass, or the Operation Looking Glass. Now, the super soldier community and the SSP community and asset community has taken that term and made it something that it's not. They've turned that into, being able to see into the future, see into the past, and all that with this looking glass technology. But what looking glass actually is a command control post in space to arm space with nukes. Right? That would be the superposition that Lyndon B. Johnson would be talking about, like being able to launch nukes from space, right? And everyone's talking about nuclear war, and that Biden wants this nuclear war in exchange with Russia and Ukraine. And it's just interesting when you go back through the history of this, and you're looking at the Manhattan Project and the mid 40s. They're developing nuclear bombs, and then they're arming space with nuclear bombs. Right. So it's really interesting when you look into that and you see that that would be the perfect position to have weapons in space, right? Not just on the ground in case of a nuclear attack or a nuclear exchange, but just be able to bomb us directly from space.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We had something on the television, and they had a segment from a retired general that was during that period of time when we were really tense between Russia. Everyone was, the Reagan era. But here's what he said. And what we found out years later, when Putin came into power and supposedly, disbanded the KGB and the files were released, it appears that there were craft, saucer-shaped craft. They were over virtually every storage silo in the United States, Britain, they say Russia subsequently. So to add to your story, and the movie Space Cowboy was based on that very scenario about the Russians had secretly launched back in the 70s this nuclear platform that they had covered up by saying it was, a space observation platform. Well, it wasn't. So what I'm trying to get to in this, it seems like the ET factor is much more at play here. I mean, the Pentagon now, in the new budget that's passed, has apparently opened up again. They're not calling it Project Blue Book, but now they have a permanent division. Apparently, our Space Force is getting funding that is astonishing. And so you got to ask yourself, well, what's going on? Are they preparing for something?
I'm just gonna go with whatever I've been kind of looking at lately and just my gut feeling, because that's the only thing that I can really go off of. That's the only thing we can all go off of when we're trying to understand a lot of this stuff. I think that there has been another huge deception when it comes to, the alien and ET phenomenon. And I'm not saying it's not real at all, but I think that there's a lot of programming been involved with that as well. And I think it's for technological reasons. I think that we have a lot of dangerous technology. We have a lot of advanced technology we've been holding on to for a very, very long time, that we've had for a very long time, whether it's reverse engineered from ETs or alien craft, or whether we made it ourselves. The fact is, we probably have some pretty gnarly shit out there that we've been holding on to, that the U.S. military really wants to, either come out with slowly or introduce to the public, or just know that we have on hand in case of something like a nuclear attack or something like that. But I do believe that there are other intelligences out there. I think there's other dimensions and other things that we interact with, but I'm not sure that the what we understand as the ET or alien phenomena is what is happening in reality. I think there's a lot of deception behind that. There's a lot of mind control behind that, and there's a lot of things that we're being programmed to believe that might not be reality when it comes to the alien phenomenon. And I know Ryder's been looking into a lot about that too, as well.
Well, let me ask you both. Ryder, I'll put this question to you then. My problem with ET is that I think it more came from the inner Earth, not the outer Earth, because I don't know how biological mass can, number one, survive the vastness of distance. That's my first question. Because if you're telling me that they have advanced to the level to where they can move physical matter in the matter of a blink, okay, that's fine. But I'm not sure how that's doing. So, Ryder, do you think that this is a foreign intelligence consciousness that exists in our galaxy or even our universe? Or is this, as those of us in the occult realm believe, that it's probably more dimensional than it is physical?
Yes, I've done a lot of study and a lot of work into this, and my conclusions are that anything that is physical in our reality, any UFO, any physical ET or physical alien, is us. And anything that's non-physical, like a contact experience, where you meet a supposed ET in your dream state or in an altered state of consciousness, that's a consciousness phenomenon. I don't think the UFO phenomenon and the ET phenomenon are even connected, right? I think those are completely two separate phenomenons that has been lumped together in the same category. Because when you go back and you look at the history of UFOs, you'll find that it came from our technology that we created here on the planet. Walter Bosley has done a lot of work and written several books about this. The Sonora Aero Club in Northern California in the mid 1800s were developing what were called airships. Then if you go back and read through the newspapers, which there's a bunch of connections between the OTO and the occult that's connecting to through NIMSA and the Sonora Aero Club and all of that as well. So there is an occult aspect there. But whenever you go back and you realize that a lot of this stuff is of our creation, and then you fast forward a little bit into World War II, you see that they were doing almost the exact same thing in Germany. They were just using a different kind of method. And that's where the Glocke Bell technology comes from. It comes from previous work from Peter Minnis and James Delshow creating these airships. They were just using it in a different way. The airships were created with a green spinning mercury fuel additive to be able to let the craft lift up off of the ground. And the Germans were using a red spinning mercury fuel additive in their the Glocke Bell technology. And then after World War II, all of these events start happening, right? You have the Roswell event of 1947. You have the Washington Flap event of 1962, I believe, or 61. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it back up again. And then the Kecksburg event of 1965. And then we go to the moon in 1969, right? And then the abduction phenomenon happens, right? Betty and Barney Hill were abducted in 1961 as well, right? And the thing about the Betty and Barney Hill case is that the first statements from Barney was that it was the military that abducted them. His first 5 or 6 statements was that he saw military officers, military personnel. It was a military craft. And then after him and Betty got regressed from the regressionist, the hypnotherapist, they changed their story to it being aliens, right? To it being ETs, which is highly suspicious. I don't believe in any hypnotic regression. I think it's all nonsense because you get really leading questions. People can change their mind, right? And that was either an influence from the military or a 3-letter organization to get them to change their mind surrounding, because if it is the military and they come out and keep saying that it's the military, then that's a problem, right? That's a problem if it's the military. So the easiest way to cover that up is to switch the narrative and make them believe that it's ETs that are abducting people physically. Right. So when you look at the history of all that stuff, now there are, when people are debating me on this, they'll talk about, historical text, biblical text, and stuff of advanced craft. They'll bring up the Vedas and these supposed ET experiences like the Book of Ezekiel, the Book of Enoch, and all that. But we don't have any proof that any of that stuff was from extraterrestrials, right? That could have just been a highly advanced human group that was doing that, right? I think if ET exists, it's us. They are us. They are genetic cousins. They are our genetic brothers, and they're out in space, right? I don't think that any physical ET that is on the planet is an actual extraterrestrial. I believe that they are either from the planet, like you mentioned earlier, inside of the planet, which makes them terrestrial, does not make them extraterrestrial, or they are a genetically engineered species that has been back engineered from something else to go out and do the military's work of abducting people.
Okay.
I want to throw something else out there that we can chew on here. Just another possibility for the nature of this reality. I've been looking at this a lot lately, and it resonates with me, although there's no way to prove any of this stuff. I've been looking at the possibility that this whole reality is some sort of manufactured, simulated, holographic reality that possibly we are in control of on the outside. We're like avatars in here. We're trying to grow and grow our consciousness and spiritually advance. And we set this whole thing up for ourselves. And that would explain a lot of paranormal activity. Maybe it's part of the program. It's part of, what we're here to learn. Maybe ETs are part of the program. And the other option is that it is still a matrix or a program or a simulation, but it was hijacked at some point by archonic entities, by evil spiritual entities that keep us trapped and reincarnated in this space and keep us coming in. And what these contact experiences are, either us, our spirit or our soul from outside this simulation giving us direction, appearing to ourselves as extraterrestrials because that's what we can best understand. I've just been toying with these ideas lately. I've had a few guests to discuss this, and it's very intriguing to me, and some of it resonates with me a bit. So that's just another option I just wanted to throw out there.
So let me ask you two about, because when we talk about technology, I was part of the birth of the internet, defining what the internet was going to be on a B2B, B2C, doesn't matter. But one of the things I've been acutely aware of, and that was because of me presenting at investment conferences, is that there seemed to always be something. You couldn't put your hand on it physically, but there was something driving this technology, new ideas. I mean, the entrepreneurs that I knew, we were all getting downloads. I mean, I invented 2 payment systems, and these kind of things were unheard of. But here's my point. So we have one aspect of the physical aspect of something going on, some sort of technology, but then we have this unseen factor, and we refer them to angels, demons. But what if, I mean, let me ask you, do y'all both believe that we possess physical souls, that we are spirit beings?
I do, and I believe I have communicated with what I understand as my higher self as well. But that's just my own experiences.
Ryder?
I think that we all have a consciousness, and that consciousness is, I think the soul and the spirit, or whatever you want to call that, is the foundation for the consciousness. Because if you don't have a consciousness, then your body cannot be animated, right? You can't be, walking around. So does the soul go along with the consciousness? Does the spirit go along with the consciousness? Possibly. I mean, it would kind of have to, because then what would be the point of having a soul or a spirit without consciousness?
It's interesting you bring that up. Tomorrow, please join me. So I'm going to lay out for you how we die. Many of you will probably experience this, because there is, and this is written by a hospice nurse of over 45 years of seeing people make the transition. And it's very clear that we possess something. And I have to tell you, I'm older than both of you on this, but I respect that the immense knowledge both of you have. But I'll just add my 2 cents into the bucket. It's very obvious to me that it's consciousness. And I think it's a rhetorical debate to say, is it my soul? Is it my spirit? What it really is, it's my consciousness. And that's what every one of us have a deep-seated fear, because it's a part of us. At that moment of transition, is my consciousness, is this going to hurt? Is this, is this going to, and it's the fact that this consciousness is basically metamorphosizing into another realm. So join me tomorrow. It's it's a short little book, but it blows you away, because it brings back all this discussion. If that's the ultimate exit for all of us, then we get back and we start retracing these questions that we've been asking ourselves. Wow, I mean, is there really something else guiding all this? Or are we just so insane as a species? It's beyond our ability.
Yeah, it could be maybe something else guiding us, or we are trying to guide ourselves, but there's just so much programming from everything else that it's hard to decipher what we're supposed to believe, where we're supposed to go, what we're supposed to understand. And that's all part of this experience here, is trying to decipher through that programming and bullshit and get to the real truth. I think that's all part of our experience here, is trying to understand what we are, why we're here, what we're doing, and what the hell's going on.
I'm going to take that.
Don't just sit down and play your video games and, wait for
just
your
play
football
video
and
games. Yeah.
go on with life.
I'm going to take that one step further, though, Chris. Are we meant to know the truth? Are we supposed to know the truth?
Probably not, but I'm still going to fucking look. I don't care.
But that's a very interesting concept, and a very interesting thing, that it would just be about the experience here and being in this 3D physical reality. And this gets back to the Bible and the original creation of Adam and Eve, were we once all one here? Like a lot of people talk about, they toss around that term, like we are all one, we all come
I
from
don't
the
think
same
we're all
place.
one.
I
I
don't think
don't
that we
think we
all
come
either.
from the same place.
It doesn't make any sense that we would all be one. We all have different experiences, all different perceptions of reality, and our truth and our reality is based off of our experiences of being here, right?
Someone has dictated our concept of reality today. Did y'all see the show I did yesterday about Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel on the serpent in the garden?
With Trina?
Yeah. No. This was the one I did on Monday. That there were two serpents he painted.
Yeah, I think that
Not one, two.
like it's really interesting into decoding the Bible and stuff too, because from my knowledge, there is a upright serpent and then there's a fallen serpent. Right?
See, and it gets to that whole duality thing. It's just, that's the trap. I swear it's just because there's nothing in this realm that makes any sense. I mean, listen, we're about to head into this country worldwide into a financial collapse. These are the things that are in play. And Ryder, you said something before we went. We talk about being aware. We talk about being enlightened. We talk about, ascension. But yet, Ryder, you pointed out something, and I don't see any effort today, nowhere in the world, of bringing us together. Wasn't it in Michael Jackson in the AIDS thing that, we brought the, 1 billion people together at the same time? Never been done before.
We Are the World. Was that it?
The hands across the We Are the World. Yeah. And who can forget Freddie Mercury and Queen? But anyway, I just digress. And that's the other thing. I was having a conversation with someone who's a DJ.
Fauci killed Freddie. Sorry.
And we were both saying more music is now being written by AI programs. And then humans are just merely singing, what the AI is putting together. And, we were both commenting all the rock and rollers are dying. I mean, they're transcending to the other side. I hope they keep the band together, but it's very clear that we're in a space. I think we're in physical outer space, in a space that we don't want to be here. There's something negative about this region of space that we're in. And we can only hope that we're going to move out of it. But he was saying that in the music world today, the world of creativity is diminished. We don't have the creativity anymore.
Because it's regurgitated nonsense, and they just keep making the same thing over and over and over again, and with a new bow on it and passing it off as something new. That's how the music has worked. That's how the movies have worked. That's how the TV shows has worked. I mean, how many of these exact same kind of TV shows can we get? But I think that they're doing that because it's kind of proven to work. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a good show. Like, they just keep doing the exact same thing. I mean, how many zombie movies
It's
have
become a formula.
Good word. I like that.
And they've done that on purpose, because they know that it's going to generate income, because it's been proven to work in the past, right?
Okay, you hit something, Ryder. I'm going to inject it because it immediately in my mind when he said it, bingo. You see, I've been examining this realm more and more, because I know that the eventuality, even if I live another 3,000 days, that's 10 years, that the exit is inevitable. And as I examine my place in spatial reality, if I'm looking outside, looking in, you said money. And it seems like this realm is dominated. It's like it coalesces with everything in this realm, and it contaminates everything. I mean, the older I get, the more I see how much of a trap it is. I mean, I gave freaking 40 years of the best part of my life and energy into making money. I mean, it
But-
changes people.
But then look at the opposite side of that too, Wayne. What would be the incentive for people to do any work without some kind of exchange, right? What were they using back, way back in the day, building the pyramids? What were they using, building these giant cathedrals, this amazing architecture? Were they using the same kind of currency that we are using now, or was it something different? Was there something more to this reality that gave us the ability to want to create something, to be creative, to create these enormous structures and these enormous things that in our past?
So let me ask you, Ryder, do you believe a person should, when they are born, that humans are born to work?
Well, that's the kind of reality that we have placed.
I agree with you. Yeah.
There has to be something different, because if there isn't some kind of exchange of something, then we lack all kinds of incentive. Okay, let's just take this for example. Let's just say the world ends tomorrow, right? And there's, let's say that half the population is gone, right? Government's ended, it's all over. Who is going to take care of the things that needs to be taken care of in order to keep society going? You would be doing that for free. There would be no exchange. You would have to do that out of the kindness and generosity of your heart to keep everything in progress, right? You just can't let the roads go to shit. You just can't let the trash keep piling up, right? There has to be somebody doing that to keep things moving. Right.
So
I think you hit it on the head when you said, out of the generosity of our own heart, I think we're missing equal exchange. I think there is something that exists in this reality that we energetically can feed off of each other instead of having this monetary thing. I think we're missing out on something that we understand as equal exchange of energy that has been missing from our reality for a long time. And I think that's where we're at now. We're so used to the currency situation and working for paper nothing, and that the equal exchange of energy is meaningless now. And we don't understand any of it. And I want to go back to the lack of creativity for a second. Another aspect, huge aspect of that is even within the past 5 years, we've had AI writing people's papers for them. There's new programs where you don't even have to write a book. You don't have to be creative anymore. It'll all do that for you. It'll paint your pictures for you. It'll write your stories for you. It'll do anything creative that you want to do. The AI will take care of it for you. So you no longer have to have any creative bone in your body. And that's another thing we're facing there.
Wow. As you were talking, it's interesting. So let's say the world did end, the half the population is gone. The thing that I hit on immediately is that there's going to be a barter system. And if you take the Bible, for instance, which is the foundation of many belief systems and government systems, even our financial system, our currency, right from the get-go, there is a sense of value, currency, because, Abel brought 10% of the harvest of the animals and Cain brought his 10%. And so it's immediately this thing that you're like, again, we're almost forced into it. And you said it, Ryder, back there. I don't know if we can conceive another reality where there isn't that, because then what is the incentive? What's the purpose?
Exactly. I agree 100%. And the barter system thing makes logical sense.
It does.
But is everybody going to have something to barter with? You think that these crazy radical leftists, I don't want to get too much into it.
I would say prostitution would be the first thing.
I was going to say, we've all got mouths, we've all got hands.
I mean, I'm
going.
just being honest. I mean, it seems like sex is the big motivator.
And when you look
maybe
back, that's one thing we
exception.
all had is we all had holes and something to stick in those holes. So
I was at a men's retreat decades ago, and this guy got up there and he says, men have the natural urge to penetrate anything. And it's so true. And from
that's a sexy tree right there.
From an esoteric point of view, the men never got the fact that the woman is the temple. And, you know, she only allows those into the temple from whom she chooses. We never figured it out because we're just outside wanting in, any way to get in.
Yeah, which also brings up the, you know, the Bible and the real encoded message of the Bible, which I think is allegorical and metaphorical in nature. And I think that it really all revolves around sex. I think that the whole thing is about sex and the orgasm of man.
Well, the
That's what it
fall
all
of
comes down to.
man, you know, and I keep saying to this to people, where are you going to live at when you die? But here's the thing I am convinced of. I'm convinced there's sex on the other side in the ethereal. Because if you follow the story of the 200 angels that came down, right? And what was the very first thing they did? They started having sex with the women, you know? And so, I mean, did they what? They just suddenly come upon the fact of sex? No, they had to bring that knowledge from wherever they came from. Just saying.
And Gabriel was the Archangel Gabriel was the person that the angel of God that showed man how to have sex properly. And that's what the Immaculate Conception is. Immaculate Conception doesn't mean that you don't have sex, right? Immaculate Conception just means clean and pure, right? So in my eyes, that means that Immaculate Conception means that you have sex and have a child without the orgasm. And I believe that that is what Gabriel was teaching Adam and Eve to do, and also taught Joseph and Mary how to do. It's a misconception that Immaculate Conception means that no sex is involved.
Well, I'll counter that. In the Apocrypha, the book of the Apocalypse of Adam, in that book, it is because it talks about the trials of both Adam and Eve. They committed suicide. Adam committed suicide like 13 times. Eve committed suicide about, I think, 11. And one of the things in the book, it says that it was the serpent, Satan, who came and told Adam about what coitus was all about. And Adam's response, and if you read the book, it's interesting. He said, "Why would I have sex with myself?" Speaking of Eve, because she came from him. And for him, it was, you know, and that gets into that whole thing why women aren't allowed into heaven, even the Christian heaven. Did you know that women are not allowed into heaven?
Watch the show on that. Very interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to that point, so it was Satan, who was actually taught them the whole process. So it's interesting. We have the Gabriel story, and then we have the serpent who comes in and messes with, you know, man and woman all the way through. So if you believe that.
Yeah, I think there's a huge aspect of sacred sexuality that we're missing in our modern times. And
I have a whole series on sex
for a
magic.
very long time, we've probably been missing a lot of the aspects of this. And like we were talking about earlier, we've been programmed to view sex in a certain way, to use it in a certain way, just to be using it as a pleasure. And we've lost all our understanding of the true powers and energies that can come from these acts. And we just use them as just these shallow things to express, you know, whatever to each other, but it's not the true nature of the way these acts were supposed to be expressed. And that's another huge problem with where we're going with transhumanism, feminization of men, masculinization of women, all these things that they're trying to alter within us.
Well, let's get real. If you take the sacred books, the Bible, the Quran, even the Talmud, is sex is forbidden. I mean, the Greek mythology belief was sex was only allowed by the gods. It was, you know, that ambrosia.
Yeah.
Because go ahead, Ryder. That's good. I love what the people are saying in the chat room.
I'm checking it out too. Yeah. It's really interesting, you know, looking at like what you said with all of the different religions and how it revolves around sex, and that sex was just meant for the gods because it was a sacred thing. And I think that when the orgasm got introduced, that was the fall of man, and that was the kicking of Adam and Eve out of the garden, which the garden isn't in our 3D physical reality. The garden is in Yasad, which is the fourth dimension, is considered the fourth dimension, which is the realm of thought, ideas, and beliefs. It's a non-physical
I call it a
dimension.
holodeck.
Yes, of course, according to religious text,
Yeah.
that's where it existed. It's in the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah. The Garden of Eden existed in Yasad, which is the fourth dimension, right? And whenever the orgasm was introduced to man, introduced to Adam, that whenever they ate from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, they became aware of the orgasm, and that's what they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden for. And then they gave them the ability to reproduce on their own without the knowledge of God's angels directing them in the way that they should be having sex. And
there you go.
Sacred kind of sex.
God's angels guiding them, telling you they're all over it. The Liber Lilith was the one that where in that book, it's very interesting because a true witch, a true wizard, and a witch can also be a man, although it does mean wise woman. If you can get at that point in your mind and in this sacred act of which it is, particularly where sacral sex magic is concerned, it's that moment where the rhythm, the vibration reaches that pitch that it literally rips the fabric of space-time, and it's accumulated into that brief moment where that charge is thus put into what we would call the sperm and the cell coming together. It's very powerful. If we ever grab a hold of that as a species, we will become the gods.
That makes me wonder if the orgasm was introduced as another way to siphon energy from us.
It is.
I mean, look at what's happening with pornography these days in the younger generations, and even everyone that's hooked on pornography. The amount of energy coming out of people whacking it every day from porn's got to be colossal. So, I mean, that's another aspect that we got to look at. Are they harvesting our sexual energy from this?
Oh, hell yeah, they are. I mean, were y'all ever fans of Star Trek Next Generation?
I watched it because my dad watched it.
Okay. There was an episode where Data went back to San Francisco back right in, the late 1800s, met Mark Twain. Anyway, there was a race of beings that would come and feed upon humans. And in this case, they would take their physical aspects of what we would call their soul or their conscious. But the thing is, they had like straws that were into us. And that's what succubuses do. I related to people the other day in my show. I only had one sexual encounter with what I do believe now was a succubus. And that's what they feed off of. It's intense energy. And you're right, Chris, there should be more talked about this, because the harvesting of the addiction of what's taking place here is if we could fully grasp it, it would freak our species out.
Well, another thing that we talked about on our last show, Wayne, is that they've really screwed this whole thing up hardcore by circumcising a majority of the population.
Oh, hell yeah.
That has completely destroyed the connection that we have to a higher power, and really destroyed the sexual act in a whole, because you're in a hole. Did you catch that?
That tells me why the God of the Bible is not the true God. I mean, if he created a man in its perfect form, then what the hell is the circumcision about? I mean, come on, that ain't right, man. I mean, what are you saying? So afterwards you went, oh shit, man, I didn't mean to keep that like that.
Well,
I
and
mean,
it also screws up the connection that you have with your partner, because without the foreskin, you've basically cut your connection to that. The fluids are meant to mix in that way, and that's what forms your bond and your
it
connection to your
forms a
partner.
seal. It does, literally. Now I know this may seem a little, mature, but that's all right. It affects us all. I mean, who are we kidding here? It's like, always when I used to be in church, it was always amazing to me how how people could point out the sins of others, like, oh yeah, can you believe they did that? And I knew specifically, I'm going, anyway, I digress.
Yeah. And I'm sure that over the years, the making of a lot of these sex acts is so taboo and getting so strange and weird with it. It gives people this sense of kind of guilt and charged sexual energy that it changes the energy that comes out of these acts into something that is no longer probably as natural as it once was. We have all these introduced feelings and emotions that aren't natural from sex, and also we have this kind of guilt associated with it, built out over the years. We're not supposed to have sex, this act's bad, this is nasty. All these things that go into our consciousness that feed on the fact that we don't understand our own sexual energy. And there's the embarrassment factor has to play into the energy that comes out of all that. And I think that's another thing that is ruining the sacred sexual aspect of us.
I had a seer, she told me once that there is a race of beings. That's what they do. They harvest that because humans realize we can actually create another life, another form like us, but there's a vast majority of that energy that's siphoned off, and it still has that creative ability within it. That's the interesting thing. It is the substance of what creation is. Well, that's some deep shit. I don't care what anyone says.
Absolutely. And then when you look back at the androgynous nature of our species, because it is said that in the book of Genesis, God creates he, them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says that twice. So who is them, right? I believe that it is an androgynous creation that God and the angels created, and that was the perfect specimen, because we were complete then. The duality had been completed because we had the energy of both male and female within us, right? So we were perfect in that creation. And then when Jehovah Elohim split Adam into two, that's what created this duality. And we've been searching for that partner, that other person, that, well, you could boil it down to love, right? We've been searching for that love through our entire existence since we've been split in this duality, polarity, reality, because we're not complete, we're not whole. And I think that is a huge purpose and a huge existence of us here, is that we are just searching. We're just looking for a companion. We're just looking for love. We're trying to unify and come together again. And I think that's
That plays into the transhuman agenda, I believe, that what these globalists and elites at the top levels are trying to do is alchemically transform what they consider us into a perfect human by these transhuman agendas, masculinization of women, feminization of men. They want to unify these sexes in some sort of strange alchemical way. And I think that's what the whole transhuman agenda is heading towards. And I think that's another kind of deep aspect to the anti-Christ aspect of what we're dealing with.
But is it really the Antichrist if that's how we originally were in the very beginning?
Well, I think they're going about it through technology. They want us to become this perfect human by merging us together, by integrating technology, which they believe is our new spiritual God. They believe that, this technology is our new religion. We're supposed to worship it, and it will bring forward this new human, this new androgynous human. I think that's what they believe. And I don't think that that is the natural way to achieve this, if it's achievable at all. But I think that that's what they're trying to do, and it just doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel what I would consider to be the right way to achieve these states. That's just my opinion.
Well, it goes back to your Kundalini energy and balancing between the male and the feminine aspects of your 3D physical avatar here, right? So I don't think that that is the way to go. I don't think that merging a man with a female is perfection. I'm sorry if you misunderstood what I was saying. I think that we have to come together and connect. I mean, the
100%.
human civilization strives on connection. That's what we want. We want
And that would be the
connection.
natural right way to do it. What they're trying to introduce is through hormones and hormone replacement and cutting off your Peter and going through surgery and just becoming something different through technology. And that's what they're trying to introduce us. But you're right that there is the real natural way to do this, to connect with other humans.
I agree. And I believe wholeheartedly that that's with activating an aspect of your Kundalini energy, and that is done through sex with another partner. And from my understanding and my research, no one has ever done it. No one has ever been able to activate their Kundalini with a partner of the opposite sex together to set at the right hand of God. That's really what the whole Bible really is trying to explain, is that man and woman coming together creates God. That's what the Trinity is: man and woman, God.
And then there's the belief that that has nothing to do with anything. The real holy grail here is the advent of immortality, that we can transfer our consciousness, bypass physical death, and transfer the ability of our consciousness and its ever ability to expand into a machine. You can
I
say
think that's an aspect of it. It's all an aspect of
it's
the
immortality.
same overarching agenda.
I mean, that's what Bezos is after. That's what, Zuckerberg, they're all afraid of death. They desperately want to know how, it's like the movie Free Jack, how can we make that transition to where we become eternal in our thought alone?
And then that goes back to the question is, is our soul, do we have a soul? Do we have a spirit? And do we have a consciousness? Or are those just separate labels that we have created in turn to explain the exact same thing? Is our soul, our spirit, and our consciousness all the same? And we've just assigned different labels and thoughts to it? Because if they're all separate and we all individually have a soul, a consciousness, and a spirit, then what's the purposes of the soul and the spirit?
They're useless. It's consciousness. And if if I have a subconscious, if I'm unconscious, if I have a superconscious, I'm still conscious, consciously thinking. Anyway, well, oh man, this has been a fantastic conversation. And it deals with topics of what we're going through today as a species. We're making this, that I've never seen a time where our species is in such a state of transition. I mean, I thought the long hair and the hippie and the things that we went through in the late 60s and 70s was a thing. It pales in comparison what we're seeing today.
Bring back the long hair hippies.
I love them, man. Peace, man.
Long hair hippies and legalized prostitution in the United States. That'll fix everything.
Hey, listen, and what most people don't realize, the first temple prostitutes were not women, they were males. So anyway. Yeah. Most people don't know that. Yeah, they knew what was going on. Anyway.
Blowing
Ryder
some minds today and other things.
And let's just hope that, you know, we've kept it generic enough for everybody. But I've seen in the comments, as reading through it, that people enjoyed this conversation. I don't think I've come across one of this diversity of thought and nature of thought. I'll put it that way. So gentlemen, make sure y'all, as you're listening to this, that hit the like button, but make sure to subscribe to both of these gentlemen's channel. That I've been on their channel, vice versa. And you really I've learned a lot from y'all's guests. You bring insightful, and for me, knowledge and information that helps expand my awareness. And to me, that's a sign of a good channel.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you so much. And I'm no longer really on YouTube. You can find all my stuff on Rokfin, Odysee, and the podcast platforms. I put clips on YouTube because they don't like me there. But yeah.
Yeah. And we can change that around. We got to change that because, all voices of a reasonableness should always be heard, and when I think about it, with restrictions of what we see, when these people cross over to the other side, I bet they're going to want a voice. Sorry, you can't do that. Anyway,
censored.
Censored. Ryder, what do you have to say as we ease on out of this?
Just thanks so much. I appreciate the time. I love the conversation. Appreciate you, Wayne. Appreciate you, Chris. If people are interested, they can check me out on YouTube at Raised by Giants on Rokfin, Raised by Giants, Spreaker, any of the podcast platforms. And thanks for your time. Appreciate all.
We
the
had to
guys
do
in
one
the
on
chat.
Rumble, guys. We had to do one on Rumble where we can really get, into the real thickness of this thing, because we have to skate around the edges on this show. But that's something we ought to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally
Always down, Wayne. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Always love our conversations.
All right, everyone. Much love to y'all. See y'all tomorrow. Thank you, gentlemen. And remember, be good to yourselves. And that's the only way to be. All right. Ciao.